And for those of you who are new here, welcome to my channel where I grace ambitious women with all things self-love. If you're still here after that intro, I'm going to assume that you have some big goals. And the one thing that's going to make your journey so much harder is that annoying sound of self-doubt. Whether it's brought on by your own negative self-talk or the naysayers within your group of peers, getting control of the situation will have a significant effect on the impact that you're able to make. Having a strong support system is key. So today we're going to talk about how to strengthen the quality of your circle and empower that ambitious voice from within. So if you're ready, we're going to start with the first thing you need to know is that quality beats quantity every time. Do you ever look back to when you were in high school and you just had a bunch of peers that you called your friends, but in all actuality, you kind of didn't really have much in common with them, or the things that you did have in common were just mainly experiential, and the things that connected you were really surface level, or they just happened to be in your circle because they were in close proximity to you. Those friendships were solidified because they were so easy to maintain, and there wasn't really any friction that kind of tested the relationship. You may find this as you get older, or you may have already figured this out, but when life starts to test you and you start to go through different challenges, you'll be able to see who's truly there for you, and you'll also be able to see the people who are adding extra friction to the situation. Now, when it comes to achieving your goals, there are a lot of people who just won't see your vision, and that's okay. I don't think that should be the only criteria that one goes through in order to see who to keep in their circle. After much experience, I've kind of developed this criteria that I use when it comes to figuring out who are the voices that I want to be listening to versus the ones who I can passively say, yeah, thanks for that. Not gonna use it, but thanks. So this is the criteria that I use. Number 1, do their values align with mine? And on top of that, I like to look at the number of those values that happen to align with mine. Like, if we align on maybe like 1 or 2 things, I'm kind of like, okay, we'll converse on those 1 or 2 things. Or we'll be solid on those 1 or 2 things. But I won't go to them with thing number 3, thing number 4. And sometimes you have those friends where basically like 90% of your values align and you're like, wow, this is great. Number 2, especially when it comes to being an ambitious person, you really have to ask, do they seem uncomfortable when I talk about my dreams? And do they make it seem like I'm not the type of person who's able to achieve them? Now, these are like big red flags. And oftentimes, like, I don't penalize people for thinking this way because it comes from their own limiting beliefs. But when you're trying to empower yourself, it really does not help to have this type of thinking surrounding you. And number 3, during my last major milestone, how did they react? There are people who will literally be clapping for you, and then there will be others who kind of are just, you can tell that they're kind of just there to save face, or they're there because they feel like they need to be there. And you'll be able to tell. Trust me, like, you'll get the vibe. You'll feel the vibes. Some things just can't be hidden, and you'll know. You'll see it. It will really help you in the long run if you trust the signs and you don't just push them aside, because they will have an impact on you in the long term. Now, using this criteria does not mean that you have to completely cut off the people who didn't meet the mark, but it is a strong indicator that you really need to set some boundaries to protect your time, your peace, and your vision. You need to have ongoing positive self-talk. And no, I'm not talking about toxic positivity, but what I'm saying is that you need to believe that you can do it, whatever it may be. Living a life full of self-doubt, it's really sad. And it really doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help you, it doesn't help your peers, and it doesn't help the people who would be otherwise impacted if you just believed in yourself. You have to be your number 1 supporter day in and day out, because you are the one who rises with yourself in the morning and goes to sleep with yourself at night. You're also the person who goes about your day and is talking to yourself constantly in your mind when you're going from task to task. So in the process of living, take the time to hype yourself up a bit. Another major thing that you have to do to really boost your internal support system is you really have to find discipline instead of motivation. Because what motivation does is it's looking ahead into the future, whereas discipline, it thinks about the right now. It's focused on what you need to do now to push yourself forward. And I'm not gonna lie, finding discipline can be so boring because you're focused on what you're doing in the now and you're not really sure about what the outcome will be. But if you combine discipline with positive self-talk, your goals will ultimately start pursuing you and not the other way around. Another big thing that you have to do is you have to start trusting yourself if you don't already. Everybody in your life could be saying, girl, you can do this. But if you don't believe it, it's not gonna happen. Oftentimes, our limiting beliefs will keep us out of rooms that we're 100% qualified for. And we sit there playing small. For what? I'm currently reading The Courage to be Disliked, and let me tell you, I'm gonna have to read that thing again. But one thing that stood out to me in this book was the theory that oftentimes we'll say, I can't do X because Y. There's this causation narrative that we keep telling ourselves, when in actuality, according to the theory, we just actually don't want to do the thing. There's something holding us back. And the author says that for one reason or another, we're the ones doing it to ourselves. I know doing the inner work is so hard, but it helps. Speaking of inner work, I've had the wonderful pleasure of being acquainted with a creative coach named Chimdi, and if you're creative yourself, I highly suggest you check out her channel. She has taught me so much, but recently we actually went through a very emotional inner work exercise that made me realize how important it is to really hold space for yourself in those moments when you're feeling vulnerable. It's so important to hold space for yourself and feel those feelings when you're doing that job interview, creating that content, doing whatever it may be when you're putting yourself out there. A lot of the time, the thing holding us back is fear. And we need to hold space for ourselves and acknowledge these feelings instead of pushing them down, because that way we can actually release them and move forward. It can be so easy to ignore our feelings. You all know the saying, feel the fear and do it anyways. But what if we could get to the root of our fear? Get face to face with the cause and say, I refuse to let this hold me back anymore. Now that would be something. I think it's safe to say that who we surround ourselves with matters, and how we speak to ourselves and make space for ourselves also matters greatly. So if you like this video or found it at all helpful, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.